Hey guys, what's up? It's your boy Trix. Today we're going to be doing another Spring Boot stream. It's going to be Spring Boot with Kotlin, Coroutines, and RSockets. Haven't looked at it yet, but hoping it's going to be fun. Before we get right into this, I just want to go on a mini rant. If you've watched my streams before, you already know I start with like a mini rant, or like I just go off for like a good 20 minutes or something, and then I start actually doing something. But I just want to talk about this. So, if anybody's like seen my IEM videos, I made some in the back in the day, and I used to recommend the Moondrop arias, right, which are right here. So if I open this up, you should see, I hope that's caught on the camera, a Moondrop aria, right? These are aftermarket tips. These are the SpinSphere CP100s or CP145s. I currently use the CP100 pluses, but I just wanted to chat about these for a minute. So a while back I said that these stopped working, and technically they did, for a reason that I found out the other day, where it's the filters on the IEMs, right? And before I used to change out, and before when I had old IEMs, I didn't need to change out the filters because most of the time it would just work fine, right? Like I used, the first IEM I ever got was a KZ ZST Pro X, which is like a £15 IEM, like very cheap, and that lasted like a good, I want to say 3 years. I want to say 2-3 years, where I like daily drove those, and then I got the arias. And back then it was like, you didn't have to change out the filters, everything just sounded fine, right? Then I got the arias, and I saw like some stuff with the paint chipping off, which I have currently. Like in some places the paint is chipping off and like bubbling up, which is annoying. And then I saw some posts where it's like, you can't hear out of one side, and I was like, that's weird. Then that happened to me once, and I was like, okay, how did this person fix it? I was looking at Reddit, and they changed out the filters, right? So I was like, okay, I'll change out the filters. For some IEMs, I don't know how it is, but for arias, you have to take out the metal mesh, you have to take out the filter behind it, and then replace them, right? Which is fine. But after doing that like 3 times in a year, that gets very old very fast. So if I look up, I think they were like 15 for 3 sets. Shenzhen, that's the KXXS, but there should be a Aria one. There we are, Aria and Chu. This one. Price might be different now, where it is now, I want to say $5, right? So for tips, if you're getting tips, that's fair enough for tips, right? But for filters that should last quite a while, that's very annoying. Like I use dust without filters, and I've been using them way more than my arias, and they've lasted way longer. And I just found it very annoying having to change out the filters all the time on my arias, right? Like my S12s, they stopped working for a minute, gave them a clean, now they work fine. But the arias, I've cleaned these, and for some reason one side still decides to like give out barely any noise, and it's always the left side, I think. And like, fair enough, you should buy filters or like clean your IEMs, right? But again, I think I clean my IEMs fairly regularly, and for it to like basically like have like no audio after a certain amount of time, hang on. as I was saying, where was I? Arias. I clean my IEMs like fairly frequently, so I feel like having to buy new filters every time is very annoying, because you could blast through these filters like every 6 months. I want to say every 6 to 8 months, just from like making sure your Arias can sound fine. Like even with my Blessing 2s, I don't use the filters. Like the problem with the Blessing 2s is when you have your with the Arias, the filter sits inside of the nozzle, right? With the Blessing 2s, the filter sits on top of the nozzle because there isn't like a recess for the filter. So if you put on a tip, like an air tip, onto the Blessing 2s, like everyone who wears IEMs, the filter's going to come off. So there's no point wearing them in the Blessing 2s. With the Arias, this is just my final review on the Arias. For soundstage and imaging, fair enough, like it's a decent IEM. It's like a bog standard IEM, but I do not recommend these. One, because of the filter issue. Two, because you have to change. Well, it's the same one, right? Like just purely because of the filters. There are better stuff out there. I would not recommend this to anyone. If you're getting into the hobby, there you can spend your money on far cheaper things that do better. Anyway, that's my mini rant over. I was just saying that because I gave the same treatment that I do with my other IEMs to these, and they still are like buggy. But my S12s are fine, and my dusts are fine, and like my dusts are a lot more expensive than this. And considering that I clean my dust the same way I clean this, and my dusts are fine, and this isn't just like, what else can I do? Like I clean my IEMs whenever I feel like there's maybe some imbalance right now, so I just decide to clean it, right? I don't do like any of the stuff where you like go through where some people will like go through the nozzle with like a toothpick or something. I don't want to like accidentally puncture anything, so I don't do that. I just clean the IEM like with like a Q-tip and stuff like that, and like I'll dry it off with like a towel or something, just so that I know that okay, cool, there's like no moisture, and then I'll wait a long while to make sure okay, cool, there's like no moisture or anything on this. I can like A/B test it or something. So like after like a day or something, where it's like just drying in silica gel and towels and stuff, to be like, okay, cool, I think this is clean now. And then I A/B test it, and it's like, oh, this was fine for a little while, and then the channel imbalance came back, and I was like, I can't do anything. I physically cannot recommend this to anyone. I cannot recommend this to anyone, especially considering for similar price, you can get the Truth Air Hexa, which I'm pretty sure does not have any of the issues that the Aria has, or for cheaper, you can get the Truth Air X Clinical Zeros, the Truth Air. No, not the Truth Air. The Truth Air X Clinical Zeros, the 7 Hz Clinical Zero, or the what's it called? Moondrops Quarks DSP. Those are all all under £100, and I would very much recommend those over the Moondrop Aria. Anyway, that's my little rant over for the last 10 minutes. And that segues me into this now, where I'm going to say for this week I will be using the S12s. Hopefully you can see an S12 without the ear tip there. There you are. S12. I had the original S12 instead of the S12 Pro, back when the S12 was still being manufactured, I think. I think now they don't manufacture the S12 anymore, they only manufacture the S12 Pro, right? Hang on, I can check that on my phone. No, I can still see some places selling the S12. But the S12 Pro is more popular. They have the same tuning and everything, it's just the S12 Pro has a different... Ooh, wait, hang on. Does it have different terminations too? Ooh, that's a game changer. Oh, not really. No, it doesn't. It's if you get another package. Okay. Yeah, they're the same tuning, just different housing, well, the housing's the same, just different color. So the normal S12 is gray, the S12 Pro is blue. I would say I would lean more towards the S12 Pro just because of the different color, because lots of IEMs like aren't very imaginative with their casing and coloring and stuff like that, and just having something that looks a bit nicer is a little more interesting. But obviously that's like from a stylistic perspective. I know some people are gonna be like, it's in your ears, you're not gonna see it, but it is something you can take into account. But in functionality wise, they are basically the same imaging, same tuning, same soundstage, everything. It's just housing is different, that's all. But yeah, if you're thinking of getting an IEM, my base standards now for recommendations is, if you do want to spend under 100, I can only recommend the Truth Elixir, just because it looks like the most decent thing under £100 that you can get. Under 150, I want to recommend the Let's Show S12s. Actually, under 150, I'll recommend the Let's Show S12s, just because I'm pretty sure you can get the S12s for 112, I think. And then I just want to check what my the next recommendation for like under 200 is gonna be the SE, the Sennheiser IE 200. Sorry, but I don't know. I don't know if, like, some companies do it that you have like the exchange rate actually done properly. Yeah, this is done properly. You know what? Instead of the S12s, I'll just recommend the IE 200s under 100. So I mean under 200 quid, get the IE 200s. Don't even bother with the S12s. Actually, I'm going to change what I'm going to say. If you are new to the hobby, obviously stay under 100. Figure out what you're tuning, what you like in tuning and stuff like that. Then when you want to like experiment, oh no, not experiment. When you want to get a better IEM based on the tuning that you like, go for, I want to say, either under 200. I would either recommend the IE 200 or the S12. If you like treble, go with the S12. If you like bass, go with the IE 200. You need to do some stuff to the nozzle on the IE 200 just to get proper bass response. I was watching a Giz audio video where he was talking about how you need to wrap the nozzle on the IE 200 correctly, or it starts leaking bass. You can fix that easily with aftermarket tips. If you get like the Spinvit 100 pluses and you just chuck that on, it covers it, so you don't have to worry about leaking bass. But yeah, I'd either recommend the IE 200 or the S12. If you're going above 200 quid, you're aiming for under 300, I'd say honestly there's not that big of a difference between under 300 and under 200. So I just recommend sticking with what you want with the IEMs that I said. If you're going for around 400, get the Dusks or the Blessing 2s. Either way, if you like a more neutral tuning, go with the Blessing 2s. If you like more bass, go with the Dusks. I have the Dusks just because I like bass, and I have the one with the Clinical Waifu on it because I'm a I was gonna say degenerate, and then I was like, and then it just didn't come out. Under 500, around 500, there are two IEMs that I would recommend that I have not tried yet, which I do want to try. I haven't tried the IE200 either, but I've heard good things. If you get aftermarket tips, if you don't get aftermarket tips, then just go with the S12. But the two IEMs that I want to try, well, I do want to try one of them. The other one is like maybe Moondrop Variations and the Zen's Manga Top. I would like to get the Zen's Manga Top. That's like my next upgrade if I do decide to upgrade on my Dusts. If my Dusts somehow stop working one day, I hope they don't. And like maybe just want to give it a go, like maybe just like in the store or something, the Moondrop Variations, just because I've heard the bass on the variations is like extremely well done. Then for like endgame, I would say my only problem with endgame is endgame is just like a state of mind where it's like, oh, you are okay spending this much money if this were to go away, if if this were to like break, it would be very difficult to replace. But you'd still replace it, right? I would replace my dust in a heartbeat, right? My S12s, there's always something better. But for 330 quid, there is nothing better than the dust that I've seen right now. The Zen Mango's top, just because of a Giz audio review where he said that he liked it more than the variations just because it suits his taste. And I was like, I looked at some of the test tracks that Timmy, who's one of the Giz audio reviewers, uses when he's demoing sets. His like preferences are very in line with mine, but I like treble, which is why I would say I would go with the Zen Manga top. But then his endgame IEMs are like I think the Elysian Annihilator, which is the one that he's like, oh, that's like the top end of the only IEM he would have for life, is $4,000. And I don't think I would justify that. I don't think like I would. Let's say that IEM breaks, right? I would not go out of my way to go and buy it immediately, right? Like with the dust, I would buy those in a heartbeat. If there was a Zen Mango's top, I would buy those in a heartbeat if I did have them, right? But 4,000, and if they were to like to break one day, I'd have to fork out another 4,000. I might as well just get 4 IEMs. No, I could get 8 IEMs at 500 that all have different tuning that sound amazing and have that variety. Like there was this one post that I saw on Reddit that's like there's always the choice between variety or like performance, right? Like either you go for the best of the best for that price, or you go for decent enough for the price but lots of them, right? So like instead of getting one £100 IEM, you might splurge and get like 2 £50 IEMs because you want to have different tunings. The premise behind it is if you go with one £100 IEM, cool, you can daily that, you'll have good use out of it and you'll enjoy it, right? But I'm on the side of I would rather have multiple IEMs that I can switch between just for the enjoyment, because like at the end of the day, it's still better than most gear out there, right? Like I honestly, I believe my S12s blow my Samsung buds and my Bose NC700s out of the water completely when it comes to sound quality, reproducibility, soundstage, imaging, tonality, everything compared to like my S12s. My Arias, like, they get blown out the more easily just because like one side isn't working. But for the S12s, there is something way different when you compare it to like a planar IEM where everything's just reproduced so quickly and so nice. And then the dusts are like in their own league when it comes to sound quality, just because the dusts are like a mini headphone. And when you're using a closed back headphone like the NC700s and you compare it to the dust, purely on sound, the dust sound better. Like genuinely. So that's why I like to switch between my IEMs. I remember saying this the other day that I have lots of gear, right? But I like to switch between everything. So like like last week I was using the Arias where I was like, yeah, I'm gonna test the Arias again. And then just before the stream, I was listening to a track with my S12s and I was like, Arias are crap. Arias just sound crap. Like it's a whole other league. And then like next week, the week after this week, sorry, on Sunday when I do another Spring Boot stream, I'm going to be using my dust and then I'm going to be thinking, why did I even use my S12s? And then I'm going to keep cycling back all the way through. But just that variety of, oh, I can touch this, I can listen to this, and then enjoy it while it's there, and then switch to something else and be like, oh, I missed this. Oh, I want to see this again. Oh, I like this. It's just refreshing. I like that in gear where it's like not everything's the same, because things can get boring after a while, right? Like the thing I see the most in the audiophile community like on Reddit or something like that, is you'll see someone who splurges a ton of money on a specific set of gear, and then they'll see a couple, then they'll listen to it to death, right? Where they just get used to the tuning. Then eventually they'll see a review for something else that's like maybe a bit more in line with their tuning that might cost the same or a little bit more, and then they'll upgrade immediately, right? Just because they got bored. They got bored of their current gear. And to that, I say, it's because you've been listening to the same thing all the time. It's not that your gear has got bad. Good audio gear stays good. I believe that wholeheartedly. And that's why I'm like, from my general opinion on the Arias, I believe they are good, but they aren't what they could be now, because there are some better things that have come out in the time, right? But I haven't sold my Arias. I haven't got rid of them. I still use them because I know that until these completely break, I'm going to keep using them. And completely broken to me is I try playing something out of them and it just sounds wrong. So, channel imbalance can be okay, but sounding completely wrong, where like the tuning is just wrong, where it sounds kind of wonky, that's like a deal breaker for me. Which is why I'm okay using the Arias, but I'm not going to daily them, right? I used to daily the S12s when I used to commute on the way to work. I used to daily the dust when I was like sitting at my laptop or just sitting in my room listening to music. The Arias I used to daily when I was in university, and I just feel like currently in the IEM market, it's just not as good as it could be for the price. But yeah, that's again. I'm just saying, if you can, if you at least buy different gear and just experiment with it, and when like I get bored of IEMs, not easily but kind of quickly, because I listen to the same type of like radio stations, right? So when I'm listening to music, it's like a similar song will be put on and I'll be like, okay, cool, let me just listen to this. And then if I hear that song on my DOS, I know as soon as I hear it on anything else, it's gonna sound like kind of wonky. I'm not gonna say shit, it's gonna sound wonky though, right? With that being said, some tracks do sound a lot better on different gear. Like I found vocals sound a lot better on the S12s sometimes than on the DUS, and that's just because of the treble region on the S12 is a lot brighter than on the DUS. Bass on the DUS is a lot better than on the S12s. That's hands down. And then the Arias are just like kind of in the middle, where it's not doing anything great, it's not doing anything badly. It's just there, kind of. But that's why I'm saying, like, if you can at least play around with different IEMs in the same price bracket, you'll figure out, okay, cool, you like this about this IEM, you like this about that IEM. Or if you like do what I did, where you were like, okay, cool, I'm gonna get this IEM, then you do an upgrade to a different IEM, then you do another upgrade to another IEM, but you just play around with them. You don't just sell your gear and just be like, okay, goodbye. But you like eventually come around to, okay, cool, I've listened to this for a while, let's circle back, see what I like about these ones, so you don't get fatigue of the same IEM. Because I found that lots of people switch out their gear very quickly just because they are getting fatigue from their gear. And it's not that you just you can stop listening to it, right? And just stop listening to it completely. But when you come back to it, you're still going to hear the same thing, right? Unless you listen to something else, get attuned to that sound, and then come back to it. I mean, come back to like your higher end gear, you won't notice a difference because your brain just programs that, oh, this is how sound should sound. That's why I'm like, oh, whenever I switch between my S12s and my DUS, I just enjoy the experience, because I'm like, ooh, this sounds different. Ooh, this sounds a lot better on this one. I don't know. I find it that way. Obviously, enjoy the gear, enjoy the music, and as long as you're having fun, then you're doing okay. Obviously. I just recommend experimenting with something with like the gear. Obviously, like you don't have to buy the same type of tuning for the same of IEMs in the same price bracket, right? Because that will get boring anyway. Like you'll see like some technical differences between them, like, oh, maybe this reproduces bass quicker, maybe it sounds a bit more breathy or airy with like vocals on this IEM, but essentially they're the same tuning, right? I'd always recommend, like, if you can, side grade, so you get a different style of tuning that doesn't sound wonky but still generally decent that could be interesting, right? Like the S12s and the DOS. Of course, that's an upgrade, right? From the S12s to the DOS. But what people don't know is I bought the S12s after I got the DOS, right? Like, I got my Arias, then I jumped straight to my DOS, and then I bought S12s when my Aria stopped working properly. And I still like switching between my S12s and my DOS, just because the sound that it produces for the same track is just a little bit different, and I enjoy it. If I had to choose what IEMs like, I would 100% like if there was like a file or something and I could only save 2 of all of my like audio gear, it will only be my S12s and my DOS. If it's just 1, it's obviously going to be my DOS. But if it's 2, S12s and DOS, and that includes like my Galaxy Buds, my NC700s, all of that, I would give them up in a heartbeat to just say my S12s and my DOS because they sound that good. Anyway, that's me finished rambling. I'm going to get on with coding now. Anyway. Tutorial shows you how to build a simple chat application using Spring Boot and Kotlin. You will learn about the benefits when you code and develop from a syntax perspective. You start with a minimum implementation of the application, or evolve it step by step. At the start, the application generate and display fake memory messages and use the classical blocking request response model to get data to the UI. Through the tutorial, we're going to evolve the application by adding persistence and extensions and migrating to a non-blocking streaming style for serving the data back from the backend to the UI. The tutorial consists of 5 parts: initial setup and introduction to the project, adding persistence and integration tests, implementing extensions, refactoring the Spring Web Flux with Kotlin Coroutines, and streaming with RSocket. This tutorial is designed for Java developers who have already had their hands on Spring MVC Webflux and want to see how to use Kotlin with Spring. So I'm just going to open this in a new tab. To start working on the tutorial, we'll need one of the latest versions of IntelliJ. Any version from 2018.1 onwards, you can download the latest. The project is based on Spring Boot 2.4.0, which requires Kotlin 1.4.10. Make sure the... You know what? I'm just going to open IntelliJ. I knew I should have just opened IntelliJ. There we go. Get from VCS. URL. Copy link address. Control V. There we are. Clone. Just go wait a minute. For anybody that does want me to do an IEM like stream, just talking about different types of IEMs and stuff like that, or like recommendations, drop a comment maybe. and I'll do it, or like at me on Mastodon or Twitter. I don't really check Twitter, but I do check Mastodon. So if you do want me to do like an IEM stream, just talking about IEMs or something like that, I'm down. Is building. Okay. Obviously, as this had me clone the Git repo, probably not gonna be building it from scratch, from what I could see, but it would be fun nonetheless to inspect the code and have a look how it works. I probably won't be uploading this to my GitHub. I did upload the other one to my GitHub after I got it like semi-working, but this one, like, I've cloned. I'm not gonna take I'm not gonna take credit for cloning this repo and just uploading their code to mine, right? Like that's wrong. Even though I do accredit the people that I do that I get the tutorials from in my README on the repo, lots of people don't consider that as proper acknowledgement unless you like fork from the main repository, which is very fair because I'm not making an improvement, right? I'm just following the tutorial. It's just that I'm following the tutorial by hand, which is why I'm saying I probably won't be uploading the repo to my GitHub. But yeah, this is taking a long while. If we're into the go into the main file, and this one. Oh, it's trolling. It's indexing. Come on, man. It's doing a lot of downloads in the background. Yes, come on. It's getting there. Just wanted to say, you never know. I might just upgrade to the Zen Manga's top, and the next time these S12s like stop working, I'll just upgrade instead of doing like a side grade for the S12s. I might not even get the IE200s. I think I got the S12s just because I wanted something that I could daily that I wouldn't feel bad like breaking. But at this point, I would just always upgrade now. I don't see a point in buying a cheaper IEM than the DUS just because I feel like I wouldn't be able to replace it. Like before, when I didn't have a job, that's like my whole thing was I wanted to get an IEM that if it were to break, it wouldn't hurt me that bad or my bank account that bad to have to replace it. But now that I do have a job, it wouldn't be that bad for me to just upgrade my IEMs next time it breaks instead of just getting like a side grade of the one that I used to daily. Because I used to daily the S12s, right? That's why I used to daily the Arias, right? That's why I side graded to the S12s because I wanted an IEM that I wouldn't feel that bad if it would break, even though I had DUS at that point, because I could have just like upgraded my DUS to the variations, which I'm very glad I didn't do because the Zen Language Soft came out during that time. But yeah, next time my one of my IEMs breaks, I'm just gonna go for an upgrade. I would like to keep the DUS around. The DUS are like OG. Like the DUS are like the one IEM that I just have that I'm like, it feels good listening to good audio. The S12s I do feel like that sometimes, but it's like because of that treble peakiness sometimes. Well, that treble peakiness in its tonality, sometimes it can sound very weird depending on the track, and then other times it sounds amazing. But with the DUS, it's like everything just sounds good. Everything is like chef's kiss. I'm just browsing Reddit while this is indexing. Oh no. Jesus. It's such a big library. Let's just scroll through while this is going. In the following step, we will demonstrate how to integrate our application with a real database to store their messages. Let's take a look at the general application overview. In this tutorial, we are going to build a simple chat application that has the following architecture. Browser, HTML controller, and message resource, which goes into the messaging service. That messaging service will go to a persistent messaging service and a fake message service. Persistent messaging service will go to H2, which is going to be the Hibernate database, I'm guessing. Our application is an ordinary three-tier web application. The client-facing tier is implemented by the HTML controller and message resource. The application makes use of server-side rendering via the timeleaf template engine and is served by HTML controller. The message data API is provided by a message resource, which connects to the service layer. The service layer is represented by the message service, which has two different implementations. Just to say, this is the UI service resource, I'm pretty sure. As in layers, sorry. I should have specified that. There are like lots of tiered architectures. Because this is saying that this is the service layer, I'm pretty sure this is the UI layer. And then this is the resource layer. Or what people might call like the data layer. The first implementation will provide random messages. Second implementation works with real data storage. We will add this implementation part to the tutorial. Nice. System message service connects to a database to store the messages. We will use the H2 database and access it via the Spring Data Repository API. After you have downloaded the project sources and open them in IDE, we'll see the following tutorial includes classes mentioned above. So if I just open this src main Kotlin, and then there's the controller, there's the service, and then there's that. Then inside the test, there is chat, Kotlin, application. Under the main Kotlin folder, there are packages and classes that belong to the application in that folder. I'm guessing this is going to use MVCS, Model View Controller Service. We're going to add more classes and make changes to the existing code to evolve the application. That's the one that I forgot the other day. I was like MVC, MVVM, SPOMs, and then I was like, oh, what's the last one? It's MVCS. God damn it. Folder, you will find various static resources and configuration files that test Kotlin. Just to say, there are more than that. There are definitely more than that. There are probably a ton that people can use for like how to structure their application. It's just MVC, MVVM, and MVCS are probably the most popular ones that people know of. I know SPOM because of Flutter, where you'll have like state management systems that actually like give you that architecture kind of like block, and then there's like some tutorials that are like just use whichever one you want. The most common one that I saw was just segmenting out your business logic into different folders. Instead of trying to use block for modules, you'd use folders for everything. Modules are a lot nicer and a lot better to use just because you could delete a whole module and everything would still work. Whereas with folders, because you're using a folder which stores everything, you can't just delete that folder and just expect everything to work. HTML controller, let's have a look. Okay, one of the features you can use in Kotlin is the type inference. It means that some type of information in the code may be omitted to be inferred by the compiler. In the example above, the compiler knows that the type of the messages variable is list messages VM from looking at the return type of message service.latest function. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Spring Web users may notice that the model is used in this example as a map, even though it does not extend this API. This becomes possible when another Kotlin extension, which provides overloading for the set operator. For more information, please see the operator overload documentation. Null safety is one of the most important features of the language. In the example above, you can see an application of this feature. It is a safe call operator that also exists in Flutter, by the way, which checks whether the result of last or null is null and then gives an ID. If the result of the expression is null, then we can use Elvis operator to provide a default value, which is our example, is an empty string. We need an API endpoint to serve polling requests. This functionality is implemented by the message resource class, which exposes the latest messages in JSON format. And if the last message ID query parameter is specified, the endpoint serves the latest message after the specific message ID. Otherwise, it serves all messages. That's in this one. In Kotlin, if is an expression and it returns a value. If this is why we can assign the result of an if expression to a variable. That's basically just a lambda there. The Kotlin standard library contains scope functions whose sole purpose is to execute a block of code within the context of an object. In the example above, we use the with function to build a response object. Fake message service is initial implementation of the message service interface. It supplies fake digital chat. We use the Java Faker library to generate the fake data. The services generates random messages using famous quotes from Shakespeare, Yoda, and Rick and Morty. Nice. Kotlin features functional types which we often use in a form of lambda expressions. In the example above, user quotes is a map of objects where the keys are strings and the values are lambda expressions. A type signature of says that the lambda expression takes no arguments and produces string as a result. Hence, the type of the user quotes is specified as map string to string. There we are. Map of function. Let's create a map of. I can't be asked to read that. To do function plays two roles: the remainder role and the stab role, as it throws the not implemented error exception. The main task of the fake message service class is to generate a random number of fake messages to be sent to the chat's UI. The latest method is place where logic is implemented. Where is that? Inside here? Yeah, nice. In Kotlin, to generate a range of integers, all we need to do is say 0 to count. That's a spread operator if you've never ever seen it in JavaScript. We then apply a map function to transform each number into a message. Notably, the selection of a random element from any collection is also quite simple. Kotlin provides an extension method for collections, which is called random. We use this extension method to select and return a user from the list. Once the user is selected, we need to acquire the user's quote from the user quotes map. The selected value from the user quotes is actually a lambda expression that we have to invoke in order to acquire a raw quote. After. Next, we can create an interface of the message VM class. This is a view model used to deliver data to a client. For data classes, the compiler automatically generates a toString equals and hashcode function, minimizing the amount of utility code that you have to write. Adding persistence to the integration test. In this part, we will implement a persisting version of the message service interface using Spring Data DBC and he shows the database. We will enter the following classes. Let me just check. Does this have a chapter 2? Part 2 is there. Nice. Okay, so let me just switch over to part 2 then. Part 2 it'll probably be easier and like work instead of me trying to hack something in, right? Persistence message service, an implementation of the message service interface, which will interact with the real data storage via the Spring Data repository API, message repository implementation used by message service, adding the dependencies. First of all, we have to add the required dependencies to our project. For that, we need to add the following lines to dependencies block in build.gradle.k2s. If you've ever seen Gradle before, you'll understand where to put this. It's an implementation block, so you go to dependencies and chuck it into implementations. That is this bit here, and runtime only, same stuff, put it here. In this example, we use Spring Data JDBC as a lightweight and straightforward way to use JDBC in Spring Framework. If you wish to see an example of JDPA usage, please see the following blog post. To refresh the list of project dependencies, click the little elephant icon that appears in the top right hand corner of the editor. I can't get that to appear right now, but you can just use reload all Gradle projects and that should do it. Create database schema and configuration. Once those dependencies are added and resolved, we can start modeling our database schema. Since this is a demo project, we will not be designing anything complex and we'll stick to the following structure. So this is basic SQL saying create a table if it doesn't exist called messages. So if you were to rerun this, it wouldn't make it again unless this messages table was deleted or dropped. Now you have an ID, which is a varchar of 60 bytes, I believe. It's default with a random UUID and is the primary key. You have content, which is a varchar that can't be null. Content type, which is a varchar of 128 characters, sorry, not bytes, I'm stupid. 128 characters that can't be null. Sent, which is just a timestamp that can't be null. Username which is a varchar of 60 characters that can't be null. And then an avatar image link, which is a varchar of 256 characters that can't be null. Just to say, varchar is basically characters and numbers and symbols and all of that jazz. Just any type of string. Create a new folder called SQL inside of resources. There we go. Then put in the SQL code above into the schema.sql. That's just this. Also, you should modify application properties so it contains the following attributes. There we are. Using Spring Data, the table mentioned above can be expressed using the following domain classes, which should be put in the domain model KT. There we are. There are a few things here that require explanation. Fields like content sent and ID mirror the message VM class. However, to decrease the number of tables and simplify the final relationship structure, we flatten the user object and make its field a part of the message class. That's fair enough. Apart from that, there is a new extra field called content type, which indicates the content type of the stored message. Since most modern chats support different markup languages, it is common to support different message content encodings, like UTF-8. Oh wait, does it mean like? It doesn't mean UTF-8. It means like application/JSON, application/HTML dash whatever, markdown, like things that you can send over the internet. Like when you render a page, like here, if I do inspect, if I go to network and I don't want to do a real refresh right now because it's gonna lose where I am. But in here I'll have a doc type. Where is it? Is it in the head? Oh, it's gonna be easiest if I just refresh the page, isn't it? Oh wait, no, doc type HTML. So stupid. But yeah, this is just saying that when this is sent, it will show up as an application/HTML document. Yep. At first we will support plain text, but later we will extend content type to support markdown type too. That's fair. Once we have the table representation of the class, we may introduce convenient access to the data via repository. So inside message repository, go to Kotlin chat repository folder. Inside message repository, just dump in this code. That's fair. That's literally saying you want to write an SQL query that queries the database directly, right? That's all this is doing. If you've ever used not Django, if you ever use SQLite in Python or TSQL in Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, it's basically the same. In Django, you do it a bit differently, where it does like models for you, where you interact with the database without having to write SQL. You just write normal Python code to grab something because it treats everything like an object, and that object has all of these parameters abstracted, or all of these methods, abstracted away, so that you don't have to write out the SQL yourself. You can just say you want to select something and then type in in a string what you want to grab. Message repository extends an ordinary code repository and provides two different methods with custom queries for retrieving the latest message and for retrieving messages associated with specific message IDs. Do you notice the multi-line string used to express the SQL's query in the readable format? Kotlin provides a set of useful additions for strings. You can learn more about these additions in the Kotlin language's documentation. Our next step is implementing the message service class that integrates with the message repository class. Put in the persistent message service, this one. Placing previous fake messaging service implementation with this. Yep. Is a thin layer of message repository, since here we are just doing some simple object mapping. All business queries take place on the repository level. On the other hand, simplicity of this implementation is the merit of the Kotlin language, which provides extension functions like map and with. If we now launch the application, we will once again see an empty chat page. However, if we type a message into the text input and send it, we will see it appear on the screen a few minutes later. So if I go to this one, and let me just give this a quick run. funnily enough, I do not know if this will run correctly because I am using a different version of Java. It looks okay for now. I want to say that looks okay. Let me just bang it on it. Let's have a look. Oh, you can't control enter, okay. Hi. And Tero relevancy, okay. And then if I open a new browser, I'm gonna go to here. Hello. So everybody who opens a new browser instance has their own auto-generated avatar and name. Okay. Cool. Finally we can write, let me just stop this. Finally we can write integration test to test. Finish all that code can properly over time. Adding integration test, you literally just scroll down to test, scroll down to here. Just take a look at this. We use the late init keyword, which works perfectly for cases where initialization of non-null fields has to be deferred. In our case, we use it to auto-wire the message repository field and resolve the test REST template. For simplicity, we will be testing these 3 general cases: resolving messages when last message ID is not available, resolving messages when last message ID is present, and sending messages. To test message resolution, we have to prepare some test messages as well as clean up the storage after the completion of each case. Add the following to there, where it has a setup before each, right? Yeah, it already has it there. And a teardown. Once preparation is done, we create our first 2 test cases for message retrieval. Just to explain what before each and after each is, it basically means before each test and after each test do these things. And then this parameterized test, I'm just going to explain that in case someone's never used JUnit before. A parameterized test is just saying that you want to pass a parameter to a test to do something. This is saying that that parameter will be a value source which contains booleans of true and false. So I'm guessing that this test is going to run twice. So it has messages with latest message ID as a boolean, and it will use this boolean throughout the test, right? So first it will run with true and then it will run with false. All data classes have a copy method which lets, hang on, let me just turn this on, which lets you make a full copy of the instance while customizing certain fields if necessary. This is very useful in our case since we want to truncate the message sent time to the same time unit so we can compare the timestamps. Kotlin supports the string templates. Kotlin's support for string templates is an excellent addition for testing. Once we have implemented this test, the last piece that we have to implement is a message posting test. Add the following code to chat applications tests. That's this one. Yep. Parameterized test is this one. Nice. It's accessible to use function names with spaces enclosed in brackets, backticks in tests. See the related documentation. The test above looks similar to the previous one, except we check that the posted messages are stored in the database. In the example, we can see the run scope function. This makes it possible to use the target object with the invocation scope of this. Once you implement the tests, we can run them and see where they pass. So you can just click this and click run. And then you should see for one of them that it has like a 1 and then a 2 in square brackets, or a 0 and then a 1 depending on how this indexes. It's taking a bit. Oh, I want to see this running too. In this show ignored basically means like only show the ones that fail. If you highlight the ticks, it says show passed. If you only want the ones that fail, only highlight this one. Yeah, you'll see 1, 2. At this stage, we added message persistence to our chat application. The messages can now be delivered to all active clients that connect to the application. Additionally, we can now access the historical data so everyone can read previous messages if they need to. This implementation may look complete, but the code we wrote has some room for improvement. Therefore, we will see how our code can be improved with Kotlin extension during the next step. Okay, so let's go to part 3. In this part, we will implement extension functions to decrease the amount of code repetition in a few places. For example, you may notice that message to message VM conversion currently happens explicitly in the persistable message service. We may also extend the support for different content type by adding support for Markdown. First, we create the extension methods for message and message VM. The new method implementation conversion logic from message to message VM and vice versa. So this is message VM. Inside this one, I think. No, it's inside message repository. No, message resource. No, it's in one of these. Oh, this one. Huh? Where's that? Oh, it's this one. I'm bloody stupid. Sorry. Store the above functions in the extension.kt file. Now that we have extension methods for the we can use them in message service. Set this. Code above is better than it was before. It's more concise and it reads better. However, we can improve them even further as we can use the same operator. In fact, we can improve by adding a what? By adding a I can't scroll that way. Function for list. Okay. With this line included, Kotlin will provide mention extension method to a list whose generic type corresponds to the specified one. Note that you cannot use the same extension name for the same class as a different generic type. The reason for this is a type erasure, which means that at runtime the same method would be used for both classes, and it would not be possible to guess which one should be invoked. That's because at runtime it will invoke the one with in the class path that's like closest to it, I believe, or has like the shortest path to get to it. That's why if you use a library and you have like, I don't know, let's say you import time or something, right? And another library has another import of time. Depending on the precedence that at runtime, it could just ignore the one that you decided to import directly because the other library you're importing is already implementing another version of it. So you might not have access to some things, or you might have access to things that break some things that you're already using. Once all the extensions are applied, we can do a similar trick and declare supportive extensions for use in the test class. Extensions file. We can now move forward and implement support for the Markdown content type. First of all, we need to add the utility for Markdown content rendering. For this purpose, we can add a official Markdown library from JetBrains to the build Gradle file. So inside of here, there's a dependency implementation or JetBrains Markdown. This one. Since we already have learned, I need to refresh this, don't I? Since we have already learned how to use extensions, let's create another one. In the extension KT file for the content type enum, called render. So each enum value will know how to render a specific content type. In the example above, we use a when expression which provides pattern matching in Kotlin. If when is used as an expression, sorry, the else branch is mandatory. However, if the when expression is used with the exhaustive values, enum with a constant number of outcomes or sealed classes with a defined number of subclasses, then the else branch is not required. The example above is precisely one of those cases when we know at the compile time all the possible outcomes and all of them are handled, thus we don't have to specify the else branch. Now that we know the when expression works, let's finally add a second option to the content type enum. That's just the... let me just put 10. Oh, it's this one, isn't it? Yeah. I was hitting the window, the super key when it's supposed to be the control key on Linux. Sorry. Power of when expression comes with a strong requirement to be exhaustive. Anytime a new value is added to the enum, we have to fix compilation issues before pushing our software to production. Once you have fixed the render method to support the new content type, we can modify message and message VM extension methods to enable use of the markdown type and render as content accordingly. We also need to modify the test and ensure the markdown content type is rendered correctly. For this purpose, we have to alter the Kotlin application test and change the following. Once this is done, we will see that all the tests are still passing and the messages with the markdown content type are rendered as expected. In this step, we learned how to use the extension to improve code quality. We also learned that the when expression and how it can reduce human error when it comes to adding new business features. Part 4, refactoring Spring Web Flux with Kotlin Coroutines. In this part of the tutorial, we'll be modifying our code base to add support for coroutines. Essentially, coroutines are lightweight threads that make it possible to express asynchronous code in an imperative manner. This solves various problems associated with the callback observer pattern, which was used for both issues in this tutorial. We will not look too closely at the coroutines and the standard Kotlin coroutines library. To learn more about coroutines and their features, please take a look at the following tutorial. Start using coroutines. We have to add 3 additional libraries to build gradable KTS. That is these 3. Interesting that this is broken. Unresolved run blocking. There we are. Once you've added dependencies, we can start using the main coroutine related keyword suspend. The suspend keyword indicates that the function can be called in the synchronous one. Languages with a similar concept is expressed via the async or wait keywords. The suspend function must be handled in the coroutine context, which can be either another suspend function or an explicit coroutine job created using the coroutine scope.launch or run blocking functions. Thus, as our very first step in our move to bring coroutines into the project, we will add the suspend keyword to all the project's controllers and service methods. For example, after modification, the message service interface should look like this. The change above will also affect the places in our code where the message service is used. All functions in persistent message service have to be updated accordingly by adding the suspend keyword. Both request handlers, HTML controller, and message resource have to be adjusted as well. We have prepared our code for migration to the reactive Spring stack, Spring Web Flux read-on. Though in most cases it is enough to add that dependency to have proper integration with Spring Framework, we need to replace the web and database modules with the following. By adding the above dependencies, we replace the standard blocking web MVC with fully reactive and non-blocking web Flux. Additionally, JDBC is replaced with a fully reactive and non-blocking R2DBC. Thanks to the hard work of all the Spring Framework engineers, migration from Spring Web MVC to Spring Web Flux is seamless and we don't have to rewrite anything at all. For R2DBC, however, we have a few extra steps. First, we need to add a configuration class. So inside here, we have a main method, with an initializer for config. Above configuration ensures that the table schema is initialized. Modify the properties and the application properties to include just one attribute. There we are. Once we have made a few basic configuration related changes, we'll perform the migration from Spring Data JDBC to Spring Data R2DBC. For this, we need to update the message repository system derived from Coroutine card repository and mark its methods with the suspend keyword. We do this as follows. All the messages of the Coroutine card repository are designed with Kotlin Coroutines in mind. The query annotation is now in a different package, so it should be imported as following. At this stage, these changes should be sufficient to make your application asynchronous and non-blocking. Once the application is rerun, nothing should change from a functionality perspective, but the execution will now be asynchronous and non-blocking. Finally, we need to apply a few more fixes to our tests as well. Since our message repository is now synchronous, we need to change the data source URL and run all the related operations in the coroutine context enclosed within run blocking as shown in below. Our application is now asynchronous and non-blocking, but it still uses polling to deliver messages from backend to the UI. In the next part, we'll modify the application to use RSocket to stream the messages to all connected clients. We are going to use RSocket in part 5 to convert message delivery to a stream-like approach. RSocket is a binary protocol for use on byte stream transport such as TCP and WebSocket. The API is provided for various programming languages including Kotlin. However, in our example, we do not need to use the API directly. Instead, we are going to use the Spring messaging, which integrates with RSocket and provides a convenient annotation-based approach to configuration. To start using RSocket with Spring, we need to add and import a new dependency to build.gradle.kts. Next, we'll update message repository to return an asynchronous stream of messages exposed through flow message instead of lists. We need to make similar changes to the message service instance to prepare it for streaming. We no longer need the suspend keyword. Instead, we are going to use a flow interface that represents a synchronous data stream. Any function that produces a list as a result will now produce a flow instead. The post method will receive the flow type as an argument as well. Now we can connect the dots and update the persistent message service class to integrate the above changes. First, since the message service interface has been changed, we need to update the method signatures and the corresponding implementation. Consequently, the map to view extension method that we had defined previously in the extension KD method file for the list type is now needed for the flow type. Instead, for variability, we also need it added as the as rendered extension function for the message VM class in the extension KT file. Next, we will use the mutable shared flow from the Coroutines API to broadcast messages to the connected clients. We are getting closer to the desired UI with the changes. Next, we are going to update message resource and HTML controller. Message resource gets a total new implementation. First of all, we are going to use this class to support messaging by applying the message mapping annotations to the request mapping. Note that the UI. Okay. Sorry about that last bit where I just wasn't talking. My throat is just hurting and I haven't filled up my water bowl. And I didn't want to go to the BRB screen again when I already done that. Overall, my opinion about this tutorial, I think it's pretty good considering the things are actually working. But my only thing that I really, if I saw the tutorial beforehand, I wouldn't have done when starting, is I would not have cloned the project. If this wasn't part of it in the beginning, where I was like, oh, maybe they're just giving me the first half like the initial bit, and then I'm gonna build on top of it. Instead of, oh, here's everything, just switch branches between everything so you know what it looks like. I would have preferred that, just because the other tutorials is like, you could by them just linking it in the top, but it doesn't literally tell you during the tutorial, clone it, and then we're just gonna go through it. This didn't feel more like a tutorial, it felt more like reference documentation, where you have the code next to you. It's like an example piece of code, and then you're just like reading through what it does, how it works, and trying to understand it, which is good in itself because you're seeing working code and you're understanding why it's there. And like I tried to like muddle my way through it, at least. I feel like I tried to muddle my way through it, but it would have been better if it was a bit more hands-on instead of just, oh, you would change these things. It wasn't, oh, copy this and like change this and change that. It was literally, you would change these things to be this, but it was already changed because on that branch they were changed already. But obviously if you didn't switch branches and you just worked on the main branch and you just kept adding to it, it'll probably be a lot better. Again, that's probably just like a me thing, so I'm not going to use that as a knock on this tutorial. I think this tutorial is pretty good. If you want to learn, if you like know Java and you want to give this a try, go ahead. Genuinely, I think this tutorial is pretty good. For now, I'm going to remove this. This is not going to go on my GitHub just because I don't think it's worth putting on my GitHub. But next time, we are going to... Nice, this one's like a normal tutorial. Next time, we are going to be doing metrics and tracing with Spring. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, enjoy the rest of the day, and peace.
I won't be